When is the property crash coming? In this episode, we're going to talk about the property market right now, what's going on and what is likely to happen. So in my opinion, I believe that there is going to be a recorrection. If we look at a lot of the other markets that have been through these massive highs over the last few years, the car industry, for example, and many of the other product-based industries, we've seen a massive purchasing power in those industries. A lot of people have been buying stuff and property has been the same. Now, property prices are going sky high. A lot of landlords are getting rid of stock. However, that does mean that somebody is also buying the stock. So I'm not quite sure where this whole stock shortage is coming from, because someone selling means someone has to buy. There's still the same amount of property within the market. What we are finding is there is a shortage of rental stock. And that is more than likely because of, in my opinion, the way that the government are treating landlords and the fact that landlords are getting taxed so heavily. The rules and restrictions and laws are so against us if a tenant decides not to pay, that landlords are either using this opportunity where it is a seller's market to cash in and liquidate and maybe use the money for something else, or they're moving to alternative strategies, a bit like what I do with short lets and serviced accommodation. You know, I would much prefer to have guests than tenants, and therefore that takes property out of the typical rental market. And that means that there is a shortage in the rental market. We've also got a natural housing shortage because we're not building enough stock. So for me, I do think there is a correction coming. I think we're seeing it in other markets. The property market is just slightly behind. We're already seeing sort of dips. You know, you're seeing it in watches. Watches are flowing up. You know, your Rolexes, your Patek Philippe's, your Audemars Piguet's, they've all flown up in price, ridiculous amounts of money because of the demand and because, you know, there's a shortage on supply. Cars were the same and property is also the same. However, you're starting to see the watch prices now level back down. You're starting to see the car prices come back down, especially used car prices. And we're going to start seeing property prices starting to creep back down as well. Is there a crash on the way? I personally don't believe there is. I think, yes, there's been a lot of money dumped into the economy. Inflation is high. And, you know, typically that would result in a massive recorrection. But what we've got to remember, in 2008, 2009, we had, you know, a lot of foul play going on. There were, you know, investment businesses and banks doing some things where they were putting, you know, bad rated funds and bonds into good rated funds and bonds, and people were buying them and no one was really checking on them, and everyone just thought everything was rosy, and all of a sudden people realized that there was a massive debt crisis because the bad debt wasn't getting paid, and ultimately it spiraled and people started to go bust and everything happened like that. This time around was not foul play. It was a virus and it shut the economy down, and those economies have just struggled to get back going again and struggled to get the production going again quick enough to outpace the demand that was continually there. You got to remember, even though we were locked down, people still wanted watches, people still wanted cars, people still, you know, wanted the natural things that they will normally buy, houses and things like that. So that didn't stop, but production did stop. So what we've had is a massive shortage and a massive catch-up. But I think as the catch-up comes forward, then these products will come back down to a lower level. And with the property market, I just think, you know, whilst we're not building any more houses and we're certainly not catching up, we're probably getting worse. I just think there's going to be a natural correction as it starts to level out, because people only have so much money, people only have so much disposable income. And I think what we're starting to find is the majority of people have invested that surplus money that they may have had, or they may have already moved because they realized during COVID that their, you know, one bed or studio flat didn't serve their family or whatever it might be. They didn't have a big enough garden, so they've moved to a bigger house. So I think in the main, there is going to be a recorrection. Is there going to be a crash? I don't think so. I think you might see a small reduction, maybe maximum 5% in some of the key areas. And I do think that things will level out and go back to normal, as I predicted about a year and a half ago, to pre-COVID levels, where everything was just ticking along nicely and, you know, and everything was just working quite fine. So that's my prediction on the property market. But hey, what the hell do I know? I think for years we've all been saying that it's definitely going to happen. It's definitely going to happen. This COVID stuff can't last. This buyers, you craziness can't last, and it's continued for years. So, we could be another couple of years before we see it, but, all we can do is go with data. And for me, it's following patterns. And I believe that a lot of other markets have recorrected themselves, and the housing market is no different, and that will follow suit very, very soon.